self-portrait is Buddhist monk. Just did this painting and sent it by train up to Gauguin in Brittany. Amazing. Sometimes, he'd roll them up, send them by freight. Oh my gosh. Anyway, and he did sell more than one painting. I discovered about a year and a half ago, I was doing research late one night and found some letters that said from his brother and by Vincent himself that he actually sold more than one painting. Anyway, so Gauguin comes to live there, and Van Gogh decides to paint, just a bunch of sunflower paintings to decorate his room with. So this is one of them, 3 sunflowers in a vase. This is Vincent's bedroom in Arles. And he did really 2 portraits, self-portraits in a way. This is Van Gogh's chair by Van Gogh. Okay, check out the chair, Gauguin's chair, that he bought for Gauguin. Cloth seat, carved arms, right? Books, candle. But for himself, humble, pipe. He really almost worshipped Gauguin and really just thought he was the best thing happening, the best painter happening. But like I said, they argued all the time about everything: food, house cleaning, women, prostitutes, and art. And Gauguin said to him, use your imagination. Why are you always going outside to paint? Use your imagination, make things up. And Van Gogh said, why should I make things up when I have so much beauty in front of me? Right? So anyway, but he did do this called Memory of the Garden at Etten. Remember that one of the places he lived in Holland, the drawings that I like? This is Memory of the Garden at Etten. Very much influenced by Japanese art. The perspective is flat, and then there's the kind of short brush strokes that he learned when he lived in Paris from the Impressionists, and then the road going off the top. So it's and the black outline, very much influenced by Japanese art. So this is Memory of the Garden at Etten. And then look at this one that he did from real life. The Red Vineyard, same subject matter. This is the one that historians say he sold only one painting. This is the one they're referring to. Because it was a really big deal. It got written up, good review in the Paris newspaper. Van Gogh didn't like they talked about it in print. He said, I don't want people reviewing my work, even though it was favorably reviewed. It sold for 400 francs, which was a lot of money at the time. But they had a huge argument, and he ran after Gauguin, and Gauguin stared him down in the plaza, and then Van Gogh ran back to his room, stood in front of a mirror, and sliced off. I used to say a part of his left earlobe, and what I just found out recently is that he actually sliced off his entire ear, because the doctor who took care of him did drawings many years later of what he remembered of taking care of patching up Van Gogh, and that drawing lives at UC Berkeley now, in the library there. In fact, all of Irving Stone's letters, and Irving Stone, who wrote Lust for Life, his research papers all live at UC Berkeley. I just found that out. But anyway, so it looks like his right ear, but that's because he was looking in a mirror. It was actually his left ear that he cut off. So he went in, and he did that on Christmas Eve, 1888, and he went in and out of this hospital in Arles. This is the courtyard of the hospital in Arles, April 1889, and he was there in and out between December and April for 4 months, and he started having seizures. It was written in the text medical books that he had epilepsy. So this is when things started getting pretty bad with him, and he started having seizures and breakdowns. And so he'd be in the hospital, he'd go to the hospital, and then he was well enough, he'd go back to the Yellow House. And then before he left, look at this amazing painting that he did. Isn't this beautiful? Orchard in bloom with poplars in the foreground. So So this was done right before he left Arles. It's absolutely stunning, beautiful painting. Orchard of Bloom with poplars in the foreground. So he was there for 1 year and 3 months, and then he just told his brother, you know, I'm feeling better, but I think I need to be in your medical care, and so I want to commit. He committed himself to another hospital, St. Paul's Hospital in Saint-Remy. And he said, I want to be in your medical care so I don't do harm to anyone, I don't do harm to anyone else, and I don't harm myself, so I want to be close to medical attention. So he lived at the hospital in Saint-Remy for 1 year, and because he committed himself, he could come and go as he pleased in and out of the hospital, outside of the hospital grounds, and he did 144 oil paintings in the year he was there and hundreds of drawings. And he had his own studio, so he had his own room, he had a bedroom, he had his own studio in the hospital, and he was close to medical attention. This is trees in front of the entrance to the garden of the hospital, and this is irises. He did this in the first week he lived there. Irises. He done within the hospital grounds. Field with poppies. He could go out, like I said, because he committed himself, he could come and go, and he went outside of the grounds and painted this marvelous painting. Poppies with butterflies. Like I said, he loved trees. He did lots of paintings of olive orchards. This is olive trees with the Appial Mountains in the background. This was about a month after he moved to the hospital in Saint-Remy. And of course, the Starry Night painting. This was the third one that he did. Now, this is exactly where the stars were at that time. The cypress tree, he brought a little closer into the, probably wasn't that close to his window, to his studio room. And then the town of Saint-Remy was probably not that close to the hospital. So he kind of made part of it up. But the sky was exactly where the stars were and how he experienced it. Now, let me make clear that all those swirls in his later paintings, starting with this one, were not because he was crazy. Two things, the influence of Japanese art. Japanese art has this swirling motion of brushwork and shapes to it. And the other thing, maybe even more important, is Van Gogh experienced very much so everything he drew and painted as part of himself. So he said, I want to get to the essence, the inner essence and the inner character of the people that I draw and paint. And I want to show the inner essence of nature. Don't forget, he studied Buddhism. He studied Eastern art and philosophy when he lived in Paris. So he really, these were where the stars were at that time, and the swirls were not because he was crazy. When he was sick, he did not do any art at all, ever. He couldn't. When he had seizures and breakdowns, he could not, he wasn't well enough. It was only when he was well enough. And so this is because he really was almost like a mystic, where he experienced nature as part of himself. And I think that's an important point to make. So if anyone says to you, oh, he was crazy, look at the brushwork. No. That's because he experienced deeply what he saw, and the influence of Japanese art. And then this lovely one, this is landscape at Saint-Remy of the Plough Field. Two poplars on a road through the hills. Pine trees against a red sky with setting sun. So these were all done that year that he lived in Saint-Remy, from May of 1889 to May of 1890. The last self-portrait he did, 1889. learned that his brother Theo got married to a wonderful woman, Johanna. We have her to thank for all of the letters and artwork surviving after Vincent and Theo's death. So he was told by his brother that his wife was going to have a child, so he did this painting called Baby's First Steps, which was after a Monet painting, to honor their new baby, who they named after Vincent, his brother. The new baby was named Vincent van Gogh. And then the baby was born, and Van Gogh did this, branches of an almond tree in blossom. Again, the Japanese influence, the black outlines of the branches, and then the imagery going off the top of the canvas. Beautiful painting. This was also in the show that I saw in Philadelphia. So he painted this for his little baby nephew, and when it was dry, he rolled it up and sent it up to Paris. And Theo and Johanna hung it on the wall over the crib of the baby's bed, on the wall over the crib. So he did this in February 1890, and this he also did that same month. Prisoner's Round, puts himself front and center, closed in. Vase with pink roses. I'm going to go about 10 or 12 minutes longer. Is that okay? If you need to leave, do, but just letting you know. So this is Vase with Pink Roses, 1890. One of the last paintings he did while he lived at the hospital, Vase with Irises. So by now he's been there a year and he's feeling well enough to travel. He wants to move back up near Paris to be near his brother and sister-in-law and the new little baby, Theo and Johanna's baby. And he wants to live with the Pissarro family. Only Mrs. Pissarro said, you know, really like your brother a lot. He's a fine artist, but we'd really rather him not live with us. You know, so they knew of a doctor outside of Paris named Dr. Paul Gachet, this man, and he was a homeopath, and he also had a practice. He was a surgeon and had an office and a practice in Paris, and he had a fine home outside of Paris in Auvers-sur-Oise. And Van Gogh, so he went to Paris, he stayed a few days, he wanted to see Lautrec and the other artists, his other artist friends, but again, the intensity and the hectic environment of Paris just did him in, and he just couldn't stay there. So we moved after a couple days to Auvers-sur-Oise, outside of Paris, and supposedly under the care of Dr. Gachet. And he lived in he rented a room from a wonderful family above a tavern. And so that's Dr. Gachet. And this is called Village Street in Auvers. But Dr. Gachet was also an amateur painter. He had an etching press in his home, and that's where Van Gogh did his only etching, which was of Dr. Gachet. And Dr. Gachet collected art. He collected Renoir and Cezanne and Gauguin, and of course Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh gave him paintings. And there's cottages and a vineyard with a peasant woman in Auvers. Still life, red poppies and daisies. This is undergrowth with two figures. He started building what he called double square canvases. He built two squares, wood frames, and then nailed them together and stretched a canvas over the two so it was a long horizontal so he could do his landscapes. So he did this beautiful painting. I love this one. Undergrowth with two figures. And this is Daubigny's garden. Daubigny was a famous artist and who had passed away, and Van Gogh got permission from his widow to go and paint in their gardens on their property. This was not his last painting, even though it's depicted dramatically in Lust for Life in the movie. This is Wheat Field with Crows. He did a lot of paintings of wheat fields and a lot of paintings of crows, but it makes a good story in the movie. So this is Wheat Field with Crows. And Yeah, this is another wheat field near Aubert. This is a detail. It's actually a long double square. I don't have his very last painting that he completed is Tree Roots and Branches. I don't have a slide of that yet, but I do have a slide of, I didn't include it. Well, you're not going to see it, but I do have a slide of a painting that is his last unfinished painting that was found in the attic. So here's what happened. So he's there. He moved to Aubert-sur-Oise, and he rented a room top of a tavern, and he was very good friends with Dr. Gachet and Gachet's family, and he would go to Paul Gachet's home for dinner. But he kept having seizures, and he also had syphilis. He had tertiary syphilis, which affected his brain, and he had Meniere's disease and inner ear disease, a bunch of things wrong with Van Gogh, and he still was having seizures. And his brother wasn't able to send him as much money as he had been because now he had a wife and child to support. So he was in Aubert-sur-Oise for 2.5 months. He painted 77 paintings and a whole lot of drawings in 2.5 months. He went out to a field and he shot himself. And I know there's a book out. It came out about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, by two men who say he didn't shoot himself, that a teenager got hold of a gun and shot him. The Van Gogh family and the Van Gogh Foundation say no, Vincent van Gogh did shoot himself. And in the 1960s, a gun was found dating from that period in the field near where it was thought that he killed himself. So that was on display about 2 years ago at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. So he shot himself, he dragged himself back to his room. The Revue family, the name of the family, they were waiting for him to come for his evening meal, which he always shared with them. He didn't show up, he came back late, dragged himself, trailed blood, shot himself in the stomach and the abdomen, dragged himself back, went upstairs to the top floor, and they came up and said, "Oh my God, what have you done?" And he said, and he didn't answer, and they said, it was on a Sunday, July 27th, Sunday afternoon, late afternoon, "Let us get in touch with your brother." They knew his brother used to visit, his brother was sending him money. He was very, very close with his brother all of his life. He said, "No, I don't want my brother knowing." So that was, and they didn't have the home address of Theo and Johanna. They only had the gallery address where he worked. So they had to wait till the next day. So they sent someone by train to go into Paris and get Theo. They went rushing back, and Theo went upstairs, and they didn't, Dr. Gachet didn't feel he could safely remove the bullet. He thought, I think there were 2 doctors involved, and they just decided not to remove the bullet. They couldn't do it. So he shot himself on Sunday afternoon, July 27th, and at 1:30 in the morning on July 29th, he died in his brother's arms. Theo was there holding him. Vincent had a letter in his pocket that was actually a goodbye letter to Theo. He had his pipe, and then he took his pipe out of his mouth and he said in Dutch, "I'm ready to go home." And he died in his brother's arms. Theo he was beside himself. These 2 brothers were as close as 2 people could be. So the Revue family, in a room outside, out near the dining room, another room, they put his body on a table, covered it with a white sheet, and covered his body with all of his favorite flowers. It was July 1890, and so there were roses and sunflowers and irises, and there were all these summer flowers that he loved, and he covered his body with all his favorite flowers, and they hung his artwork on the walls in the room like a halo around him, and they brought his art supplies, his paint, his easel, his stool, everything, and put it at the foot of the table. And people came from Paris, artists and friends came from Paris to pay their respect. He was taken to a cemetery and buried. Theo could not say anything. Dr. Gachet was able to say something, but was crying, sobbing the whole time. Theo goes back to Paris to work again in the gallery and to be with his wife and child. that he can't concentrate. He cannot concentrate. He is so overcome with the death of his brother. Johanna takes, before that, this is a drawing of Van Gogh on his deathbed by Dr. Gachet. And then Theo, while he was still able to do this announcement of Van Gogh's, of his brother's death, as like we do announcements of births and weddings, when they did announcements of deaths then. And then he couldn't concentrate, and Johanna took Theo back to Holland and their baby, their son. And Theo Van Gogh, 4 years younger than Vincent, age 33, ended up in an asylum and died 6 months later. 6 months. Almost to the day after his brother shot himself. And in the newspapers it said that he died from grief, from sorrow. He had strokes, he became totally paralyzed while he was in the asylum from stress. The only sign of life is when someone would come and read a newspaper article mentioning Vincent's name, his eye, he would flutter his eyelids. He also had syphilis. So he died 6 months later. This is Johanna, his wife, and their little baby, who grew up to, in 1973, opened the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. Johanna moved back to Paris, and Theo had saved all the letters from Vincent, every letter. All 650 of them. And Johanna went back, not so much, I mean, she knew that it was a way for her to be close to her husband by reading the letters that Vincent had written him. And she had been asked, she was told by the Van Gogh family, throw all the art out, throw the letters out, no good. And she thought, you know what, if my husband saved these, there must have been a good reason for it. So we have her to thank for all of his artwork surviving and all of the letters surviving. She got exhibitions of his work. She only sold what she had to survive. She kept the artwork. She ended up marrying an artist who died before she did. She was educated. She was a college teacher and college educated. And then eventually she had her husband was buried in Holland after he died 6 months later. And then eventually she had her husband's body moved back to Auvers-sur-Oise, France, and buried next to Vincent. And this is where they're buried together. So that's the sad tale of Van Gogh. Thank you very much for coming.